Hi everybody, this is Alchemist 2 and I'm back again with another book review. I just recently read The Wastelands, which is the third book of the Dark Tower series. Of course, it's written by Stephen King, and this one is different because it is illustrated, and I love these illustrations. They really just pull you into the story so much more. I love that illustration of the gunslinger and Susanna. I thought that's actually my favorite in the whole book. But in this one, there's a lot of foreshadowing, especially with Charlie Choo Choo. That's why there's a locomotive. It's a monorail. It's funny that on the cover it shows a locomotive, but clearly it's a monorail. And there is some inspiration that comes into the story that is foretelling of where they're going to be going. They're still in Midland, but they're heading toward Endland, and the tone becomes a whole lot more serious and subsequently darker, as a lot of Stephen King books do, and the events become more murky and occluded and just very uneasy, and you can tell the characters are acting that way. We've got new characters in the guise of Oi, which is just this dog, and he says ack ack ack. It's just one of those things you don't really expect in a Stephen King book. It seems rather out of place and out of character, but still it has its charm and its dark kind of morbid sensibility and humor. And I love how funny and tongue-in-cheek it is, because, well, you do expect that from Mr. King, but it's very similar to if you were to watch Twin Peaks. It's that kind of humor. It's kind of out there, and you think, yeah, I think he and David Lynch would probably get along pretty well. Come to think of it, I wonder, what would be unbelievably cool if it did happen, if Mr. King and Mr. Lynch actually did work together. That would make quite the mind bender. It would be unlike anything we've ever seen or read, but I highly doubt that either of them have any desire to even get in the same vicinity, because they're different people, and I don't know if their personalities would mesh very well. Their styles are different, but they still have a lot of that oddball mentality that I think makes them very much alike. But book 3 about the Wastelands, it gives you more context into what Midworld is really like, and how it almost seems to be like a mirror of our world. So now I know, if you've watched Stranger Things, you realize, oh yes, it's a concept that we're introduced to in the Upside Down, and I'm thinking it gets more into that in later books in the series, but I'm probably right. I mean, I hadn't read the entire series for a long time, especially not the illustrated books, and I think that the illustrated books actually add to. Normally I would just use the theater of my mind, but I could actually see what the gunslinger and the artist depiction, what child Roland would look like, and the whole thing with the Dark Tower actually comes from Robert Browning, which I thought, oh right, Child Roland to Dark Tower came, and I remembered that poem, and I thought that's the inspiration for the Dark Tower. And of course the Dark Tower is that sort of like the sword of Damocles. It's there, and you think, well, it's sort of like that whole idea that the dread, the fear, that whole idea of, well, is this quest all for naught? Is this just a suicide mission? Is it a wild goose chase? We don't know. Roland still doesn't know everything about himself and his father. We don't know that much about his father, Stephen, either. It's interesting his father would be named Stephen, because Roland is a very Arthurian name. Of course, we realize why. And Stephen, we know, is a martyr. In the Bible, his character, if you read the New Testament, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I just thought, Stephen. I always think of a martyr when I think of Stephen, because he proclaimed to see Jesus. He was one that openly proclaimed the faith, especially in a time when it wasn't popular. And he saw heaven opening, and he saw Jesus at the right hand of God. And of course, people thought, "Oh, you're a heretic, blasphemer!" Throw stones at him. But he died, and he didn't have any pain when he did die, because he according to, I forget which gospel, he fell asleep. Of course, that means he died, but he had no pain. He was shown mercy, but his face shone like an angel. And I was thinking, wow, maybe that's why his father was named Stephen. But I don't know. That's just conjecture. It's some theory on my part. But names often have very designated meanings, and sometimes they can be allegorical. And I like the fact that this is a very kind of Wild West setting, even though it is a fantastical book, and it has a lot of very unusual, uh, abnormal abominations that are either creeping, crawling, walking, flying. They had flying monstrosities, and I thought, oh God. I mean, what are they going to run into next? This is horrible. This is absolutely terrifying. And now they're heading to End Land, and of course, the whole thing with the monorail. I'm actually going to give a little bit of a spoiler, and sorry for that, but Charlie Choo Choo, like I said, his story was based on Blaine, the monorail, and the monorail is like the Sphinx. And I don't know why, but he's very charming in his way, but he's kind of, I think he's sort of psychopathic almost. But he loves to ask riddles. He loves to pose a riddle to whomever is riding with him. And of course, the quartet that we know of, Susanna, Eddie, Jake, Roland, and Oi. I mean, even the dog has a character of his own. The dog is a very strange creature, because he comes across as kind of an unnatural being in a way. That he becomes a friend to the group. It's a very motley crew, but he starts asking them riddles, and of course Eddie poses one to him. Actually, Roland says, if you let us keep our lives to Topeka. I thought, Topeka? Really? They're going to Topeka? Well, Midworld's Topeka, I should say. Then you will let us live. You will let us disembark toward the tower. And Blaine agrees. He says, "Very well, child Roland. I shall let you have your request." But let the games begin. I thought, I mean, that whole part kind of made my skin crawl a little bit. Just the way that I could hear Blaine. I don't know why, but I think he has kind of a southern drawl. But even in that, he's very sinister, and I really enjoyed reading it. It was a sensational read. It was just as good as the others, and I'm curious. I'm wondering who created Blaine, and then there's the TikTok man. Of course, the TikTok man is also very strange. You think, why would there be a steampunk sort of character in a book that's more Wild West and fantasy driven? But I thought, it's unique in that way, because it mixes a lot of different things all together, and yet there's sci-fi in it too. So it's sci-fi, western, steampunk, horror, macabre humor, gallows humor, if you may, a little bit of past inferences to other books that he would kind of make a glimmer to, like with The Shining. He does that with the first book. He mentions the shine, so we know that the shine is important in this series as well. I can't really say that much about book 3, other than I loved it, and I just started reading Wizard and Glass, which is book 4. Of course, Wolves of the Kala is book 5, and I forget what book 6 is, but the 7th book is the Dark Tower. So I'm really speeding through it because it's something that really captivates me, and his turn of phrase, his kind of brusque and very vulgar profanity. It's unlike, well, you would encounter that more in J.J. Martin, not G.G. Martin. Sorry, G.G. Martin. Excuse me. I don't know why I mixed G.G. Martin with J.J. Abrams. I'm gonna get flamed for that. Please don't hate me. Anyway, G.G.R. Martin, George R. R. Martin, I should say. He doesn't sugarcoat stuff. He tells it like it is and calls a spade a spade. And same thing with King. King will, if a character is prone to cursing like a sailor, by gum, he's gonna do it. And he's not gonna take any qualms for it. He's just gonna let that character be as profane as possible, and you don't really think anything. You think, oh well, it merits the situation, and that's why Eddie is the way he is. And Eddie's probably the most foul-mouthed of all the characters, but he has a reason to be. And he was kind of thrown out of his world and in our realm, and thrust into mid-world, and it's sort of like, we talk about culture shock. That would be more like multiverse shock. Can you imagine? I can't even fathom, but wow. And that's what I like about it. It's just that whole multiverse theory and what if kind of scenario. But it's fantastic, and I adore it. So if you're a fan, if you like Mr. King's work, definitely look it up, check it out. It's well worth your time, and it's probably one of the better things that you'll read in a long, long time. So, till next time, live long, prosper. Ciao, tutti.